Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most disappointing teams in the NBA so far, the Golden State Warriors. Just a few months ago, they were raising the Larry O'Brien trophy once again, continuing their dynasty, and now they're 6-9 on the season. There was a lot of turmoil before the year between Draymond Green and Jordan Poole. They can't win a road game to save their lives. They're the fourth worst defense in the NBA so far. They're still a pretty solid offense, sitting at 10th overall, but that's basically all due to Steph Curry, who has been playing out of his mind. On the year, Steph Curry is averaging 32.8 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, and 6.4 assists on 53.1% shooting from the field and 44.7% from three. He's probably playing the best individual basketball to start a season of his career, better than his unanimous MVP season, better than his first MVP season, better than that year a few years ago where he led the Warriors to the play-in tournament despite having basically no help with everyone injured. This is one of the best stretches of basketball that Steph Curry has ever played, and that's saying a lot when you have a guy with a resume like Steph does. He's completely carrying this team. He's probably been the best player in the NBA so far, but it hasn't translated into any team success because he's not getting very much help. The bench has been awful, the defense has been terrible, and his co-star Klay Thompson hasn't been playing very well either. In fact, Klay's probably playing the worst basketball of his professional career right now. He hasn't shot over 50% in a single one of their 15 games, and he's taken more shots than points he's scored on the year. That's insane to say for a player that a few years ago was consensus looked at as the second best shooter in the league, only behind the greatest shooter of all time in Steph Curry. Due to his injuries, he's really starting to fall off a cliff. It's also probably due to his old age, and now there are a lot of times where it feels like he's just shooting them out of games. I'm still hopeful that maybe Klay Thompson can get back to the way he was because it's so much more fun when Klay Thompson is playing like Klay, but I'm not really starting to feel like that's a possibility. Maybe he'll get back to at least being a decent player, but right now Warriors fans on Twitter want him traded or benched or something, and that's crazy to say for a player that's as beloved in his fan base like Klay is. That's how bad he's been so far. Despite this, the Warriors starting lineup of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Kevon Looney has been the best five-man lineup in the league so far. They're outscoring opponents by 21 points per 100 possessions. That is incredibly good. And, you know, with Klay Thompson playing that bad, if he even gets back to like 60 or 70% of his old self, that lineup could continue to be one of the most dominant we've seen in recent history. So while I do think that Klay needs to get back to being a productive player for the Warriors to become true contenders, he's not really their issue right now. He's one of them, but he's not the big problem. The big problems are, like we said, the bench and the defense. Regardless of if you're a starter or a bench player, the defense is non-existent for basically anybody. Like I said, they've been the fourth worst defense so far, which in itself is an alarming stat, but there's another one that I found that is a little bit more scary in my opinion. Last season, the Warriors gave up 125 or more points only twice last year en route to the NBA title. So far through 15 games in this young season, they've done that 6 times. That's triple what they did last year, and the season isn't even a quarter of the way over. That's how big of a drop-off their defense has taken. They pretty much have no way to stop guys from dribbling right past them, which leads to switches, wide open shooters in the corner, guys cutting in. It creates mismatches. We just saw Domantas Sabonis drop a 2020 game against Golden State where he would just get a mismatch and just go straight at the guy basically every single time. They're not grabbing rebounds. They're not boxing out. The effort, the hustle isn't there, running around screens. Basically, it looks like they're not even trying. Then we get to the bench where last year the Warriors had one of the deepest teams in the league, and they had high-level role players, guys like Gary Payton II, Otto Porter Jr., Nemanja Bjelica as 3 examples of guys that were high-level contributors that are now no longer on the roster. And then, of course, they had Jordan Poole, who burst onto the scene as a high-level starter while Klay Thompson missed time, and an even better six-man once Klay came back. He played so well that he earned a $140 million contract extension this past offseason, and for most people, that felt like a pretty fair deal for how important he was, the trajectory he was on. It looked like he was only going to keep improving and seemed to be one of the next young stars for the Warriors that could take the place of perhaps like a Klay Thompson when he ends up retiring. To me, this is where the problem with the Warriors ultimately lies. You have 2 cores. You've got one that's aging, led by, of course, Steph Curry, who I still think is 2 to 3 years of MVP level play at least, but there's also Klay Thompson, who, as we talked about, seems to be regressing, and Draymond Green, who's still playing fine basketball, but definitely isn't the player he once used to be. They've won you 4 championships, and so you've got those guys, But the Warriors are scared because they see the window closing for them, and so now they've got all this young talent as well that they're trying to use to replace guys like Otto Porter Jr., Gary Payton II, Nemanja Bjelica, who all left in the offseason. Guys like Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and James Wiseman headline that young core that they're trying to build alongside Jordan Poole. And while in theory it makes sense to have young guys ready to take the mantle eventually, it's just not working. So far, the Warriors bench this year has been horrific. Anytime they come in, they immediately blow the lead that the starters just built up. It's basically rinse and repeat every single time. You've got less than 3 starters on the court, the lead is going to disappear almost immediately. James Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, each of them have shown flashes, but they're not ready to be these high-level contributors on a championship caliber team. Maybe in a few seasons they could be. They could even become stars, all-stars, superstars for all I know, but right now they just don't fit what's going on in Golden State. You combine this with the fact that Jordan Poole's been pretty underwhelming to start the year, not at all looking like the player he was last season, where he looked like the 6th man of the year and a future star, albeit he's been a lot better when they've given him the chance to start, so maybe they should put him in the starting lineup and Klay on the bench, although I don't think that really helps either because Klay hasn't played well either, so putting him on the bench won't really fix things. That is something they could think about, but ultimately, everyone on the bench has basically been bad up to this point. Now, it's not all the fault of the young guys. Other players like Dante DiVincenzo, who they brought in, haven't been healthy. And then you look at JaMychal Green, who's supposed to be a replacement for an Otto Porter Jr., and he's been really mediocre up to this point as well. So it's not all on the young guys. And to be honest, almost none of this, the situation that they're in, is really their fault. If these guys were, say, on a rebuilding team, they would have had more opportunities so far to grow, build their games, and develop, just more reps in general. But because they're playing alongside Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, there aren't a lot of opportunities to be consistently involved. And that leads to them not being ready to take on these roles that the Warriors front office expecting them to be ready to take on this season. And so because of that, nobody's really ready. Nobody's on the same page, and it feels like the Warriors front office is pulling 2 different ways. They want to keep competing now, but they also want to build for the future, and you can't do that. I'm not saying they have to trade all their young talent, but when you have a player like Steph Curry, who once again is playing some of the best basketball of his career, and he's been a unanimous MVP and a 4-time champion, so that says a lot, you have to do what you have to do to build the best team you can around him. Because they didn't want to pay guys like Gary Payton II, who went to Portland and provided them with great defense last year, or an Otto Porter, who was a floor spacer and also played great defense, they're now relying on young players that aren't ready to compete and help a guy in Steph Curry who's trying to further his legacy. He's won 4 rings so far. He's still got a few years, like I said, in my opinion, of high-level MVP caliber play at least. He's got the real chance to get 5, maybe even 6 rings and catapult himself to top 5 all-time conversations. But because the Warriors front office is insisting on trying to do this 2 ways, they are really hindering his ability to succeed right now. These young players have really high value to other franchises, especially when you get closer to the trade deadline, and a lot of those middle-of-the-pack teams are maybe looking to bottom out to try and get a chance at Victor Wembanyama in the draft. You can absolutely secure 2, 3, maybe even 4 high-level role players, or if you really want to go crazy, you could even attach Klay Thompson's contract to 1 or 2 of these young guys to go out and get a superstar if they become available towards the deadline. There are paths to improve this team, and that's why I'm not super doom and gloom on the Warriors, because I do feel like this is a fixable issue. You trade 2 of those 3 young guys in Wiseman, Kuminga, and Moody, and you attach like some contracts, boom, you can bring in a bunch of guys that can help this team get back to where they were. Defenders, shooters, whatever you feel like you need, you can still do that. Now the question is, will they do that? Because I really don't know. Part of me feels like they're trying to just stick this thing out where they still think Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green can get the job done on their own alongside Andrew Wiggins and Kevon Looney. And while that's a solid lineup, you can't win a championship with such bad of a bench and a defense that can't guard anybody. It's not going to work. You're starting the season 6-9 as a team that many people projected to be a top 2, 3, even 1 seed in the NBA Western Conference. They've got to figure something out, and they have to do it fast because you can't afford to just keep losing ground. Are the Warriors really willing to potentially waste the last few seasons of Steph Curry's career because maybe Kuminga, Wiseman, or Moody pan out to become a star? I don't think they are, so I do think they're eventually going to make these trades, but I can't say I'm certain, to be honest, because we've seen what the Golden State Warriors do in the past. They find their own way to build things, but this time it feels like it might be biting them in the butt. In fact, they don't even really seem to have a superstar caliber young player on their roster at this point, so they're probably going to even have to rebuild anyway. So I don't know what this is all about. Stop doing the 2 timeline things. Commit to your franchise player, the best player in the history of your organization in Steph Curry. Commit to this core right now. Help them win another championship or 2. Maximize your window. Nothing in the future is guaranteed, but you just saw these core guys win a championship. Help them out, bring in some solid role players, and do it fast. I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. And comment down below, what are your thoughts on the Warriors? Do you agree with me that they have to kind of give up this young and old timeline thing? Do you think I'm overreacting and that this core will eventually be fine? Let me know all of that in the comment section below. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.